we'll give them maybe one more minute to have folks kind of join here as well. Sometimes we do have some folks who are going from, other labs or other, activities and things. So we generally just provide 1 or 2 minutes for folks to join.
Sure.
Just so that they're not missing things right at the beginning. So I'll go
I
ahead
mean,
and
yeah.
start letting folks in.
And what was it?
Great.
54 people registered this morning, so I anticipate a good turnout.
Wow,
Yeah.
that's
We already
awesome.
have we have 13 people now waiting in the waiting room. So I'll go ahead and admit all of them so we can go ahead and get started in a minute.
Sounds good. Thank you.
Hi there, it's good to see all of you. My name is Dr. Amy Braun, and I'm in the Professional Development and Career Office. And we're going to just give maybe 1 or 2 more minutes. We still have a number of different folks who are joining, maybe joining a couple minutes late. So happy to just give them another minute, and we'll go ahead and get started probably at 2 after.
And Amy, I just want to make sure that James and Dean are able to join so we can get started as soon as they jump on if they're not already here.
Great. Is it James Whittle?
Yes.
Perfect. James is here. And then I think we're looking for one other.
Yep. Dean Farmer is the other up. And there's Dean. Hey,
Great.
Dean. Hey, James.
Hi, how are you?
Doing well. I think we're just going to give it 1 more minute for some additional folks to join, and then we can jump in and get started.
Great. Sorry, I was a little late. I didn't realize I had to register as a graduate student.
We're happy to have you here.
It's great
Graduate
to be
student
here.
or not.
I was trying to get in, and I realized I have to put in a school. So
Which school did you put in? Are you from Hawkins?
other.
I was just curious.
I didn't recognize all the initials, and I thought, I'll see what it accepts.
Well, either way, we accept you as you are and are happy to have
Thank
you
you.
here.
I don't know if I know how to do any experiments anymore.
All right, well, it looks like it's about 2 after. We're very happy to have everyone here. We'll probably have a number of different folks coming in and joining, as they're able. But in the meantime, I want to welcome you to our employer session with Mintz, where we'll be learning about patent law opportunities. Now, we want this to be an interactive session, so we encourage you to unmute, share videos if you feel comfortable, share your faces. We will have a structured Q&A as well as an open Q&A at the end of the presentation. But like I said, we really want to encourage you to drop your questions in the chat, drop your comments in the chat. We will have folks who are monitoring that particular chat, so please do ask your questions. And note that we are recording this session as well. So if you are comfortable, you're welcome to review the content after the event. And of course, we'll share resources about the speakers and Mintz following the event as well. So with that, then I'd like to allow our speakers to introduce themselves. So go ahead and take it away, Mintz team.
Awesome. Thank you for the introduction, Amy. So just to give everybody a brief overview of what this is going to look like, I'm first going to do a brief introduction to Mintz as a firm, as well as to Dean and James, who will then share with you guys a little bit more about their specific practices. And then we're going to do a structured Q&A session, which will allow them to talk a little bit more about their experience getting into patent law. And then we'll open it at the end for some Q&A for anything that we didn't cover. So with that, just a brief introduction for myself. So my name is Jason Rubin. I am a manager of legal recruiting at Mintz. So I oversee all of our lateral associate as well as technical professional hiring. So both patent agents as well as technical advisors. Dean is a leading patent strategist in the life sciences sector who works with biotechnology and pharmaceutical companies at all stages of development. And James is an experienced patent attorney and an accomplished research scientist who advises life sciences companies on patent prosecution matters. So with that, we can jump in. I'll tell you a little bit more about Mintz as a law firm before we hear from Dean and James. So Mintz is an AmLaw 100 law firm with over 500 attorneys serving clients worldwide. Our core practice areas include transactional intellectual property, litigation and investigations, as well as regulatory and advisory. And we have offices in Boston, Los Angeles, New York, San Diego, San Francisco, and Washington, D.C. And we recently expanded into the Miami and Toronto markets as well. So I'm quickly just going to run through these slides, and then I want to make sure that we leave ample time for James and Dean to talk about their respective practices. So a little bit more about Mintz. So we've recorded 7 years of consecutive record-breaking revenues and profitability. So, we're quickly growing, and, we're definitely seeing a lot of movement specifically within the IP sector. So it's a good time to be having this conversation. And I'll be able to share these materials with this group after this presentation. So don't feel the need to jot all of this down, because I'm going to move through it pretty quickly. In terms of our rankings and recognition, so we've received several awards and recognitions based on feedback from the client as well as the legal market as a whole. 59 of our practice areas were ranked first in our tier, both nationally as well as regionally. Some of the core pillars that we try to strive ourselves on include collaboration, innovation, and a client-centric approach.
I got a seminar to attend, but did you read about anything?
Yeah, I read about the thing you sent me. I read until like
You could just
You could
put
go ahead
yourselves
and
on
mute
mute.
If you could go ahead and mute your microphones, that would be helpful.
Thanks, Amy. So we serve clients in the most dynamic, growth-oriented sectors. Some of the major clients that we serve, as you can see here, include Myriad Genetics, Cantor Fitzgerald, Shark Ninja, eBay, just to name a few. So various different clients across various different sectors and of various different sizes as well. We service clients at all stages of growth and development. So that ranges from Fortune 500 companies to private companies, investors, government agencies, as well as nonprofits. Diversity, equity, inclusion is at the core of our firm. We have various affinity groups that are geared towards underrepresented populations, and that's definitely a focal point for the firm, especially as it relates to hiring. As I mentioned, 7 years of record-breaking results. Just going to quickly run through these. I don't think these are as relevant. We've been hiring quite a few folks over the past couple of years. Some of our recent laterals within the IP patent prosecution space include Serge Benini, who came over with Dean and James to Mintz. And with that, I'm going to stop there. Again, I know I ran through that pretty quickly, but I just wanted to give you a flavor of Mintz and what we're doing. And at this point, I think we can turn it over to Dean, who can tell you a little bit more specifically about his practice and what he does.
Yeah, thanks, Jay. Let me make sure I'm not on mute. Yeah, thanks, Jason. That was all pretty much propaganda. And this talk is really not about primarily trying to sell you on our firm, although is to give you a flavor of what one type of law firm looks like. And Mintz is a very successful law firm, and it's one of the reasons we moved here last year. I've been doing this for 22 years. I started out at a law firm called Hale and Dorr, which has been around Boston for about 110 years. It's now called Wilmer Hale, and I'll answer these questions, so we'll leave them up here. So Mintz, the question that was just put up here was how much of Mintz focuses on IP. It's a good question. We have about 115 intellectual property lawyers out of 550. So I think that there it is. That number's right here. So you'll actually have this to look at, so you can go home with it. 115 people do intellectual property, either litigation or strategy, patent prosecution, we call that. So we'll get into that in just a minute. And about 30 to 40 of us have PhDs. So you can imagine 30 or 40 of us have BS degrees, PhDs, and then went to law school after that. And some have done postdocs as well. So there's a lot of studying. So I also spent 8 years at Wilmer Hale. I spent 12 years at a law firm called Cooley, and then 1 year over here. There's also, types of law firms called boutiques, which focus primarily only on IP and do intellectual property, where they'll do primarily only intellectual property. And those are a different type of law firm than the type of law firm that we're talking about here, which is more of a general practice and do a wide variety of law. And there's different reasons for those types of things. So James and I really want to give you an overview of alternatives to just working at the bench or working in the scientific community. My practice, it's interesting. I didn't get into law until the age of 41. So I left science, and I'll tell you a little bit about my science background. I was a graduate student at Brown. I'm a chemical biologist. I went into science in the 80s as an organic chemist, but I wanted to probe DNA structure with small molecules, and we were trying to hide from the DNA repair machinery with small molecules. So we wanted to attack cancer with small molecules and probe DNA. So I did that. Then I went on to work with Stuart Schreiber and thought I wanted to be someone who would look at proteins and work there at Harvard, and decided quickly I didn't want to do that anymore because I didn't want to go after grant proposal writing. And then I took a hiatus and didn't do science for 10 years. Right after the wall fell, lived in Berlin. Then I came back and stumbled into law by going onto monster.com looking for a job as a scientist, and found law firms looking for scientists to help them look at patents. Now, interestingly, when I went that direction and found law firms looking for scientists, found out that they would actually pay me to go to law school, and they would pay for law school. And the exciting thing, and I'll answer the question that just popped up, was how much of my day is spent looking at science. So my day, and this is what I found to be exciting when I got the job at Halen Dorr, was about half of my day was spent looking at scientific papers. So I spend half my day looking at PowerPoints that actually have scientific graphs and data and scientific molecules in it to understand exactly what startups are doing directly out of universities, looking at directly out of startups and how they're trying to solve scientific problems for medical reasons, and how they're looking to get a product out of these scientific platforms into the FDA for approval. And so when I want to make sure I stop here in just a moment so you can get a chance to talk to James, but these startups will come to us in a large firm like this because they know we'll be able to help them from an IP perspective. And my job is to figure out from an intellectual property perspective how they can protect this science that I'm looking at from a legal perspective with a patent or number of patents, so they can stop other people from copying what they're doing and the science that we're reading. But at the same time, they're able to attract investment from venture capital people. So I represent also venture capital people that want to invest in those companies. And we are able to help them, those venture capital people, look at the patents and determine whether those patents are strong or whether they're weak. And by doing that, we marry the venture capital people and their attraction to these companies with the companies and the science that they're doing. And so by the investments going in there, they're able then to build those companies up and get into the marketplace and then develop those companies. So that's kind of my practice in a nutshell. I want to turn it over to James. Let me look at this last question here. Do you specifically work on patents that are very specific to the topic of your PhD, Or would you say there's a good amount of self-studying to understand patents from outside your field? That's a really good question. So most of the time for me, I try to spend a lot of the time around the area that I'm an expert in. Hence the reason why I sell myself a lot in the chemical biology space, because I'm very good at that. I tell people I work for Stuart Schreiber and I'm around that area. And then I grab James and he's going to tell you a good bit about his background. And so I don't look like an idiot. I make sure James is sitting beside me in the virus space and the things that he did. He's published twice in Nature and once in Science. And so if he is next to me, he makes me look really smart. So James, why don't you take it away and tell him what you do?
Sure, thanks, Dean. Yeah, invite anyone who wants to turn their cameras on. It's always good to see how people are responding. So I'm a patent attorney in our DC office. Great to be near you. Obviously being near in the scientific community in Maryland is a great asset to Mintz. My background started out like Dean's in organic chemistry. I was an undergrad at Harvard and actually worked in the same lab as Dean, although at different times. I got interested in biotech through an internship in a Maryland biotech. Worked for a year with Francis Collins at NIH in genomics after my undergraduate, and then did a PhD in X-ray crystallography at MIT, and then did actually 2 shorter postdocs, one topic, but I had to relocate because of my wife, in vaccines. So crystallography of the influenza HA in complex with an antibody, and then I developed a flow cytometry method for cloning B cells. And that background was really useful. That postdoc background was really useful. And so, I think at the time I thought that doing a postdoc might detract from a patent law career, because obviously you're older when you start, but you'll find that a lot of patent attorneys have postdoc experience, and it's really useful. I mean, particularly having known about antibodies is helpful because I work with CAR T companies. I actually work directly with a vaccine company that is using my postdoc work in their vaccine, which is gratifying. And I work with a lipid nanoparticle company. So I don't work just with things in my tech area, but they're all closely related. So you wouldn't be asked to stretch that far from what you do now, but a little bit away. So it's nice that there's diversity. And I think like expanding your horizons is a really good reason to go into patent law. So I never really sat down and read scientific articles in graduate school. I just wasn't that interested in them. My weekends were spent like reading The Economist and the Financial Times. My girlfriend at the time was a bond trader. So, the business aspect was part of my interest. And then I also always liked writing a lot. So I was actually studying Latin at a pretty high level. And that translates into a legal career and a patent law career, because being precise with your language is really important in our job. So, if you like writing, if you, and telling a story and being precise with language, this is a good career for you. I was an inventor. I was a very successful scientist, and so I wanted to be clear. This is not a career for people who like flame out of science and have to find a second best option. I mean, I was writing my K-99 grant application and just got to the section where it said, like, where do you want to be? And I wrote down, I want to be an assistant professor at a medical school, and then sat back and thought, that is a complete lie. I have no interest in being an assistant professor at a medical school. And like, that was the moment when I decided to to build, to go into patent law. I did an internship at the patent tech transfer office for NIH, and they run a really interesting fellowship program that some of you might want to consider. It lets you do tech transfer for a year or two. Unfortunately, it pays a postdoc salary, but other than that, it's a good option. And then, but I decided to go directly to law school, mostly because it worked out well. I was applying to patent law firms. I got my patent bar exam passed, although that's not necessary. But I had done it first to test the waters on this career, and I just didn't hear back from them right away. And at the same time, I studied for the LSAT and took the LSAT and got law is easy for you scientists. Okay, you're gonna do. I got like a ridiculously high score on the LSATs, and so GW gave me a full scholarship. So I was like, okay, I'll just go to law school, and like super relaxing after a postdoc to be a student again, and honestly just easy compared to a PhD. Like I was one of the top students without really trying that hard. Okay, it's like for us it's going to be easy. Let those humanities people struggle. You guys are going to ace all of your, like, you're going to ace it all. This is going to be an easy transition for most of you if you choose to go down this path. I think somebody asked whether you go to law school while working or at the same time. So the more conventional path is to get a job at a law firm as what's called a tech spec. You can do the tech transfer office and then go into patent law, or you can go the other direction, but they are distinct careers in a lot of ways. There's some synergy, but they're pretty distinct. So most people will take a technology specialist role at a patent law firm, and then the patent law firm generally will pay for you to take the patent bar exam, and you'll do that in your first year or two of being a tech spec. Then you'll be a patent agent for about another year or two, and then once you've got settled into the job, you understand what you're doing, you can go to law school. And some law firms just do it as a matter of course. They pay for everybody who wants to go to law school, and others do it selectively. But generally, if you're doing a good job at a major law firm as a patent agent, they'll pay for you to go to law school. So the finances all work out that way. It's just a bit harder to go to night school. If you're staying in the DC area, though, like GW, I'm on the GW advisory committee, so I meet with the dean and some judges and some other like IP professionals twice a year. And I love GW. It's a great program, and their night school is the same program as the day school. So you wouldn't get like a second best education. You take the same classes, and generally takes 4 years if you go at night to become a patent attorney by going to law school. And you take the same curriculum as other lawyers. And then you're a patent attorney, and it's good because it widens out what you can do. So somebody asked, like, what's the virtue of being at a general practice firm or drawbacks? So I think the boutique IP law firms, and some of them are big, like 400 lawyers, but they're often really good for training because they're exclusively IP. So they have like IP seminars and IP training sessions, just IP. And versus a general practice law firm, the main advantage here is that you get more exposure to litigation groups and to the corporate attorneys. So it tends to be more like generally business focused at a general practice law firm. And like Dean and I fit in well there because like, we really enjoy interacting with our corporate colleagues on, like, they'll be managing all legal issues for a company, then we'll be managing like the scientific and patent law issues for the company. What else to say? I mean, there's a couple different flavors of patent law to go into. There's like litigation, which is going to court. There's prosecution, which means interacting with the patent office to get patents. And then there's counseling and strategy. And generally the counselors and strategy people are overlap with prosecution. So if you get in this field as a tech spec, you would do the prosecution, but you might be supervised by someone like Dean or I that does the overall strategy for a company and what applications they're going to file, how it interacts with their investment fundraising, how do you protect the patents worldwide, like dealing with patent attorneys in other countries. That's the scope of the profession. Maybe with that, we should turn to questions. And I see there's a bunch in the chat, although I'll give precedent to anyone who wants to unmute and ask a question. you get to be taken out of turn.
Yeah, we've covered all the ones that are here except for one.
Okay, which did we miss yet?
I think one that we have here that was a while back is what types of skills are you looking for in applicants from science backgrounds? So this particular person mentioned that much of their training has been focused on techniques and theory, but also managing particularly students in effective presentations. So can you speak to any of those skills as well?
So the managing is good later in your career, but you're not going to be managing someone when you start in this profession. So that's a nice to have. I think the biggest mistake that people make in applying for patent law jobs is that they write all of these like businessy statements, like they'll do an internship at like the tech transfer office and they'll say like evaluated commercialization of a new product worth $5 million or like, you know, applied for a grant worth $40 million or I don't care. Okay, just to be clear, like I want to see your full scientific bibliography, and I want to know like what research projects you worked on, like what labs you were in. Like the number one thing is, do you have the technical chops in the area that we're interested in? Because like we need people that can get like a disorganized internal PowerPoint that some client presented like at a meeting, like to the other scientists at the company. And like, they say like, oh, we don't have time to look at this. You need to be able to write like effectively a scientific paper based on this like PowerPoint. Now you're not going to do it every day. Like some of our clients are really well organized and they'll send you a paper, or you'll work for a university client and they'll literally send you the whole paper and ask you to turn it into a patent application. But at the same time, we need someone who can just pick it up quickly and know what's going on. Like know that's a gel because it's blue. That's a Western blot because it's gray. Like like that's the number one thing that I'm looking for in a resume. Does that make sense? And then writing ability. Like please don't send a cover letter with typos. You're done. Okay, because this is about precision. So if you have one typo, we might give you a pass. If you got 3, we're not going to give you an interview. And it needs to be well written. And ideally, you could send like a short writing sample, because if you can't write well, you know, you have to be able to write precisely is the key, not like exposition, like, right? But like, can I write the materials and methods section of a paper in an intelligible, organized fashion without any mistakes? If you can do that, we can teach you the rest. That makes sense.
So with that in mind, that also means that you would like to see a number of publications, probably. So something along the lines of knowing that someone has gone through the publication process successfully, maybe has a first author paper or something in the lines. Could you speak to that?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And so like a section of your dissertation is probably more helpful than a paper that like your supervisor like extensively edited. I mean, if you edit it yourself, that's a fair representation of your work, but
Mhm. Or if you and your group have worked on a patent application,
right, yeah.
or something like that. What we're looking for, especially for us in a firm like ours, is one, your scientific abilities are the most crucial aspect we're looking for. If you look at our website and you look at the intellectual property people that we have, you'll see, you know, Harvard Medical School, you will see MIT, you will see Harvard, you will see Brown, you will see these type of PhDs that we hire that have come in as tech specs, as patent agents. But the great thing is they don't know a thing about the law. They don't know anything about what James has described, other than they're great scientists. They're willing to learn everything that we're willing to teach them. But they know how to write, and they know how to speak, meaning they can communicate, and they have a willingness to be taught. Yeah. And so we look for scientific acumen. We look for the ability to write and communicate, and they can present themselves well. Because in the legal profession, the only toolbox you have is in your mind. And so you have to be able to communicate. And so we also want to be able to present you to a client. So your client, for the most part, are going to be the equivalent of you, the scientist on the other side. So the first thing we do when we walk into a client, they're going to present us with PhDs on the other side. And usually we like to almost overwhelm them with how smart our scientists are as well. So right when we open our mouths and we begin talking to them, they usually, their eyes get big and they go, wow, you understand our science as well as we understand our science as well. We go, yes, we do. And so we can speak on their level with them, so they can shoot it directly at us. We get it within a short period of time, and then we take it. And as James said, it's discombobulated, and then we can put it together in a very coherent fashion and send it right back to them, digested down in a way that is a coherent story. And it really helps the client go, that's why we're paying you $1,300 an hour. That's why we're paying you $1,400 an hour for this document. And so that helps you understand why they come to law firms to put together these documents that James was just talking about. It's pretty exciting to see what it is that we're producing for them. And that's what you get to be a part of. And I just want to make sure you understand the bigger picture of what you're being asked to be a part of. Does that make sense?
That's great.
Because I can tell you it's overwhelming. The first 6 months, I would go home and my brain was jelly.
Well, I
It
think-
It literally was. I would go home every night. And my wife was like, are you okay? And I'm like, no, my brain is mush.
There's never a day that isn't like scientifically challenging. I mean, there's just never a day that's not.
James and I got a new client. I mean, we're going to pitch a client. It's on artificial intelligence and machine learning used to do a diagnostic on this new technique of something. And we got all excited and we're going to go pitch it, but it's like, do we even understand this yet? And we're like, no, but we're going to go and we're going to hope to get them as a client.
If you were like, understand computer science and biology both, like you're set up, you know. Just send your resume out and you almost can guarantee yourself a job within a couple.
As soon as this call is over, we're going to have a new venture capital group that's going to interview us from New York, and they want us to do diligence on a brand new company. They want to put, I don't know, 20 or $30 million in. We don't even know what the science is going to be yet. We're flying blind, but they're going to determine whether or not they want to use us. And this guy graduated in the top 5% of his class. Well, I was at the top of my class. James published twice in Nature.
I don't want
So
to.
we're gonna like be sitting, across from each other going, all right, who's gonna have the best papers and who graduate? It's kind of the game you're playing, but it's kind of cool. But in the end, it's going to be looking down deep into the science, and that's the cool part of this work. But it changes every day, the stuff that we're doing. You're not stuck in the same scientific question for 4 years.
I think it's important to note that like we're pretty ambitious about this. And we like startups because we like the excitement, but there are flavors of patent law that are much more
Not so ambitious.
not like we call them boring, but I guess the people doing them would like the predictability. So there's this version of the profession where
James tells me I'm too exciting, so.
yeah, well, there's this version of the profession where like you work at a U.S. law firm and you work with clients that are mostly outside of the U.S. and they send you explicit instructions about what they want done, and you basically put it in the right format for the U.S. Patent Office. So that's a lot more relaxing, I think. And then there's also flavors where you work for like bigger pharmaceutical companies tend to have like more of a process in place and like have deadlines that are further out, and so if that's your personality type, I think that exists also. And we can't overlook becoming a patent examiner. So I know the US Patent Office is advertising right now for examiners. Biotech is often the hardest job to get at the patent office. There's the highest ratio of applicants to examiner positions, but they do have openings, and I think that is a really good way to get into the profession too. I'll just caution that I do see a lot of applicants to law firms that have been at the patent office less than a year, and that's a real red flag. Okay, so if you want to go to the government, like file this away. If one of you gets a job and as a patent examiner, you've got to commit to doing that for 2 years. It kind of is, from everybody I've talked to, it's kind of a bad job for the first year. Like you're under time pressure, you don't know what you're doing. It's all remote. Every patent examiner is remote, so you don't have like close contact with your supervisor often. So there's a real like, on the one hand, they have great training programs that'll teach you all the mechanics. But on the other hand, you'll be alone at home, like trying to figure out this on a tight deadline. And a lot of people like flame out within 11 months of being at the patent office. And I think if you go down that route, you really just got to stick it out. Because if someone applies to our law firm who's been a patent examiner for 4 years, or has been promoted from a junior examiner to a primary examiner, like they're gold. Like they can do what they can write their own ticket in the patent law firm, in the patent law world. But it's about committing to something and not like not viewing like being an examiner as a stepping stone or an appetizer on the way to working at a patent law firm. And it's a lifelong career too that I really think a lot of people enjoy, and you all should consider working at the patent office.
I think speaking about learning and expanding, I know we've talked about brains being to mush and, the early stages of learning during the patent law career path. We do have a question from one of our attendees who says, do law firms send employees to learn courses and conferences to learn aspects of new technologies and approaches to keep them up? Or how do you keep up with your learning, especially if you are kind of juggling these complex AI projects and things like that? How do you keep up with your learning?
So I won't say that you never go to a conference, but I haven't been to a conference since I've been a patent attorney. I mean, I think you go to conferences for business development purposes once you have some like years under your belt. But the way you learn the most is that clients like come to you and teach you the science while paying you. So why pay to go to a conference and have to hunt down the person you want to talk to when the person who there's a person who's going to come to you, give you science that's not even published, teach you about it, and pay you all at the same time. I mean, that's the place to be in my opinion. It's really good. As far as like, I thought you were going to maybe talk about training for patent law, and there that you'll probably be sent to a patent bar exam course. No law firm teaches you that in-house. So that gives you the fundamentals. Some law firms have extensive internal training programs, and some will, at minimum, all the big law firms give you access to these video courses that are like, there's comprehensive video courses that are hugely expensive if you're applying now, but almost every major law firm has an unlimited subscription to them. So that's
let me speak to that. So as partners, and law firms are owned by partners, and these things are super expensive, and we pay for those for you. So the training course for patent agents to take the patent bar, I think costs $5,000, and we pay for that for patent agents to take. And we want you to do that because we want you trained. And so that's compensated for you. Law school costs $40,000 or $50,000 a year. We pay for that, and that's income. So we tax that for you. So you don't have to pay for that in taxes. So we tax it up for you. So it's not a burden to you. What James said about all of those videos, I'm pretty sure, and Jason would confirm this, we pay for those subscriptions. So we expect you to do that, to make sure you get your own training for those things. If you find a course you want to take and you bring it to us and go, I think I could benefit from this, and you can advocate for yourself, we tend to not say no. We go, okay, that's a good thing. Why don't we bring it into the firm for everybody to get a chance to do that? So I think the firms are very open to doing these things. It's just that we want to make sure it's available to the greater community for everyone. So you'll find places like this, and other firms, I was at different ones, will do these things because we want people to be educated and get educated. Interestingly, in a place like Massachusetts, for whatever reason, they don't have required training for all lawyers. It's kind of weird. Most states do, but Massachusetts doesn't. I think DC does. But we do want people to get that additional training any way that they can, and the firm will tend to pay for that, for them to get that.
Yeah, I think mentorship is more important than training programs. Like, I think you want to find somebody who's going to really teach you personally, because like there's times where I sat in a training and I thought I picked up something useful, but it's mostly about repetition and one-on-one. So like I hired someone from Hopkins last year. We meet every day for an hour and whiteboard out what to do, or go through exactly what needs to be done for that day, and like go through the mechanics of time entries like every day. So you need someone who's be willing to do that. I think because that's how you learn. And I don't want to steer anyone to like one path, but I do want to steer you away from one thing. There's a lot of really small law firms with like 2 or 3 people who will hire you, and we get a lot of resumes for people who have been there and it's been a really bad experience, because like a solo or a small firm practitioner has got a lot on their plate, like managing the firm, and doesn't always have time for training, and there's no formal processes there, and they probably don't like reimburse trainings like we're talking about. So I think you're really smart to look at like the top larger patent law firms as your starting point, and then you can transition to the smaller firms if you want after a couple of years of like seasoning at the bigger places that are set up to train more and have like volume of work, consistent volume of work, and have multiple partners so that, like, say you get to the firm and the partner who hired you, like, suddenly their client leaves and they have a third less work than they had before. Well, you can go down the hall and pick up work from somebody else. That's like a huge benefit versus being at a small place that, like, you might just be sitting around doing nothing if they have a sudden change in their business flow. So for those reasons, that's like the one career entry point that I would advise against.
And James, when you say that, is it because the pay, even at these technical advising roles, or the entry level positions, are those salary based or they're hourly?
So so at our firm, it's fixed amount no matter how much you bill, and then you have a target for how much you bill.
Okay.
Like, if you go above that target, you'll get a bonus. If you hit that target, you're fine. If you go below that target, if you go well below, you might get fired. If you get sort of like a little bit below, nobody, people understand you're ramping up in the profession, and we will train you how to be more efficient with your time until you start hitting those hours. And they're usually pretty reasonable. Like, they won't be as high as for an attorney, because we understand that people are getting started in the profession. Now, small law firms can play tricks on you. Okay, they'll tell you your salary is contingent on your hours, and then what they won't tell you is that if the partner thinks that you spent too long on something, he won't count the extra hours. Right? You spend 20 hours on it, he'll count it as 5 because he thinks you should have done it in 5. So you can, like, there's probably great guys running small law firms. You don't want to paint too broadly, but they're like the brand name matters. Okay, so because we have HR departments to defend you from attorneys, right? Like, and really.
Yeah. Let me, James, let me speak to this last question that just popped up, the work-life balance. And it springs off what James is talking about. So the larger firms do have very good HR departments, and typically partners would be like, HR. But I'm a big proponent of of these HRs because they protected me as a patent agent, because I had 3 little kids at home because I went to law school at 41, and my poor wife was a single mom for about 1.5 years because I didn't really see my kids from Sunday night till Wednesday night when I was at law school at night. And so it's very important that you do understand work-life balance. And I know that's a phrase that's just thrown around because it's become so normal. So at a place like Mintz, and everyone's trying to come out of this COVID, conundrum and figure out what is work-life balance now. So most firms are trying to move toward this 67%, or what do you want to call it, 60%, which is 3 days in and you can be 2 days away. And so everyone's trying to move toward that. That's the work-life balance. And I think Mintz as a firm has really embraced that. So you need to be in the office 3 days a week. And one of the reasons for that is we have 5 or 6 offices, and we're paying a lot of money for those places. So they really want everybody in. The other thing is what James was talking about, is mentoring. Law as a profession, way back when, you didn't go to law school. You actually were trained by a person standing next to them, and they actually showed you how to practice law. It's still pretty much the same thing. You can go learn things in a book, but until somebody sits beside you and goes, this is the rule, here's what happened, apply the 2 things together, and did the person break the law or did they not? You have to actually walk through these things, same way in patent prosecution and things. So being together is how you learn. Working from home and somebody sitting there, if they're redlining your paper with a pen and you got to get it to them, how do you do that? It's hard. So we're trying to figure this out with somebody working from home and they're not in. So we are trying that. So people can work from home. That's not a problem. The onus is on them to get trained if they're working from home. And so in this profession, it's a little more challenging to work from home, just like working in the lab. It's kind of hard working from home if you've got to do experiments in the lab. So getting trained is a little more tough when you're a patent agent and a tech spec. The more senior you are as a lawyer, the more you can work from home because you're not getting as much training. Interestingly, with James right now, he's in DC, I'm in Boston. A lot of my mentoring with James now is on a very sophisticated level of business development, things like this. So James and I spend a lot of time together on Zoom and on phone, but we spend a lot of time together, believe it or not. He actually knows my wife really well because we spend so much time together. But that balance comes from just being together. So sometimes being together doesn't actually mean you're physically together. So now the last question that's on here, is there a lot of travel? There isn't a lot of travel that's necessary in being a lawyer. Interestingly, though, some of my clients love for me to be in person. So for them, I do it if it's necessary. Most of the time, it's not necessary. So especially in the patent world, there really isn't a need for a lot of travel. I personally like to be around my clients, so I'll go be with them. A lot of times it's not necessary. James was just out on the West Coast.
Yeah.
He traveled back on the red eye and was like, oh my gosh, how do I do this? And I'm like, yeah, wait till you get to be my age
Yeah.
and try to go back and forth.
The
But
crab was delicious.
so it was self-inflicted travel.
Crab with champagne and on the expense account was worth the trip. But
Travel's not.
Place where they give you a hot chocolate with this, they toast a marshmallow over a little Bunsen burner. But that I travel to the West Coast 3 to 4 times a year because I'm the relationship person at Mintz for those clients.
And the reason why we'll say this out loud is because life science hubs are Boston, San Francisco, San Diego, and New York. So the major hubs, just like the universities, are in those cities. So that's where the startups are going to be. And guess what? Life science attorneys do. So we follow where those places are.
So I go to Seattle to scratch the seafood.
And we end up in London sometimes. We end up in Berlin. Those are another big life science hubs. So
I see that's where you have the poster as well, kind of behind you too, from Berlin. I was noticing that.
I lived in Berlin for 10 years after the wall fell, but we go there. And in Switzerland now, we've got clients in Zurich and Basel and Zug, because there's a lot of money now flowing in those places.
But I think of it like for the early stage, there's no travel requirement at all.
Only if you want to come, we'll bring you.
It's like if you asked to come, then generally we would obviously pay for the travel and you would come out and meet the client. If
we like you to meet the clients, we actually like that as partners. They get to meet you.
Right, exactly. But there's no requirement. It's certainly not like consulting where most of the job is traveling.
Now, the last big question we had on here that because Jason put together a lot of questions. What do you wish you knew early in your career? James, is there something you wish you knew then that you know now?
Well, I think it would have been reassuring to know how much of a well-trodden path there is, so that if you don't have to invent it all yourself. There's flexibility in the career path, but like there's a clear set of steps to go through to do this profession, and I think it's just reassuring to know that. I think I maybe wish, in hindsight, I wish that I had approached the earlier years with more humility. I think you can come out of your postdoc feeling like you're master of the universe, and then there's so much to learn in this transition that it's best to approach it, recognizing that you are building on the foundation you have, but you're restarting, and you have to, the people who can't internalize that mindset are the ones that have trouble in the profession.
Yeah, yeah. I think for me, I wish I had known then what an incredible marriage the law and science can be together, because what we do is so unique in the legal field that there's so few people that can do it. And then when you put us with FDA regulatory people, we are so unique when it comes to what we do for IPOs coming to the market, what we do for diligence. Like, it's unbelievable how necessary we are. Like, things don't happen if you don't get the IP people and the FDA regulatory people together. Like, it's unbelievable. And what James is saying earlier when he said, you know, I was first in my class at law school, and I was scared to death going into law school around all these 25, 22 and 23-year-olds at night school. There was 25 IP tech specs and patent agents in the night school at Suffolk. And I thought somehow we were going to be second-class citizens at night school. And at the end of the semester, the grades came out, and I have imposter syndrome. I was like, I'm old, I'm 41. I haven't been in school in so long. And all of a sudden I had an A+, and I was at the top of the class. And I was like, what? I'm like, I'm first out of 400 or however many there were. And I'm like, law school's not that hard. This is ridiculous. And so I would just say to all of you, if you're considering it, there's a lot to learn, and there is an overwhelming amount of reading, and there's 1,000 pages a week of stuff. But what we did as graduate students is so hard, and as postdocs, relative to law school. But what we bring to the table when we get into law is tremendous. Now, what James said is true. It's a whole new path we're on, and we have to be trained in law, which we don't know, but we can be trained. And if we're humble, we can be taught how to marry the two together. But then what we bring to the table with other lawyers is something rare. There's so few IP attorneys that marry law and science together, that we're needed on almost every deal that's done when it comes to property.
Yeah.
And these deals. And now looking back 22 years later, I get up every morning and I'm just so excited when I come into the office. I just sit here and go, I wonder what's going to happen. James and I had 2 clients that got sued for stealing somebody's trade secrets. Now, it didn't happen, but you know, it's so cool because it really bores right down into chemistry. Did somebody take somebody else's small molecules and use them? That's what it's all around. And, you know, it's just so cool. This happened last Friday, and we're in the middle of it. And it's millions and millions and millions of dollars. And it's 4 huge companies yelling and screaming at each other all about stuff. But the whole thing in the middle is a bunch of small molecules. That's what the whole thing's about. And everybody's screaming and yelling. And in the end, it's like, do they understand small molecule structures? Well, if they don't, they can't figure it out. And it's us right in the middle of it. So, you know, I'm glad that, you know, that's what it's all about. But, you know, 22 years ago, I was, you know, had imposter syndrome. So I was sitting there going, God, I'm such a friggin' idiot because I don't understand the law. And all these brilliant Harvard lawyers that were history majors, I kind of felt stupid around them. And now I look back and go, no, now I know the law and I got this science degree, and, you know, you can marry these 2 things together. So.
And I'll just,
I know it's, we got 1 minute left.
I think we also, I want,
Yeah,
I
yeah,
also want to be mindful that of the time here. We have 1 more minute before folks will
yeah.
probably need to start signing off here.
Yeah.
But if folks want to reach out about opportunities, what is the best way to connect with Mintz and learn more?
probably, I think without submitting.
That's Jason, yeah.
Website is good, or, right, or Jason, I don't.
Reach out to me, Amy, CJ, you guys have my email address, so I'm always happy to provide whatever information is available, whether it's just an exploratory chat or about a specific opening. Reach out to me and we can go from there.
They do not need law
Yeah,
experience either. None at all.
yeah, yeah, that's true. And there's, once you get, I just want to say, once you get over that hump, the job security is like second to none. Like Dean said, there's so few people who can do this. Once you get the training, you got second to none job security, and like just Google big law salary and you'll see how much money you can make in this field.
Headhunters contact me every day. I have to tell them to stop.
Oh, I just click decline like time after time. I was polite for a while. I gave up. So yeah, it's a good profession is the main point, and hope some of you will take the next step.
Thank you all from the Mintz team for joining us. We were so happy to have you here. And
Thank
for
you
those
for
of
having us. Mhm.
those of you PhD trainees and postdocs who are on the call as well, we'll be sending a follow-up email with some additional information as well. So stay tuned with your email inboxes to watch there. If you have any further questions that you'd like for us to pass along to the Mintz team, let us know, and have an excellent day.
Thank you, Amy. We'll get back to you too if you have any questions.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Bye.